All right. Before we go on and I start telling you about every personality type in their own video, I have to address the criticisms of my initial MBTI video because a lot of people were not paying attention, or they were paying attention and they just disagreed, which is okay. But I do have to address what they had to say because a lot of the criticism was fair. So let's just get into it. Criticism number one, it's a pseudoscience. And I kind of agree. Yeah, I mean, it's a pseudoscience in the way psychology is a pseudoscience. And if you just groaned right now, then let me explain. So psychology is all about like developing the theory of the mind, people's behavior, their feelings, how all of that interacts. And I'm sure you can put like drugs in that category. And I mean pharmaceutical drugs, the helpful kind. And I'm sure the recreational kind too. But the point is, psychology, yes, there is a scientific aspect to it. And there is a lot of like testing going on and there's research and it's very legitimate. But at the same time, it's not a hard science in the sense of like physics or biology, because psychology in many respects is subjective. And where it tries to be objective is basically a mixture of observing patterns in people and having people self-report their issues. So when it comes to MBTI, it's kind of the same thing. We are just noticing patterns within people and their behavior, and we are assigning I hate saying categories, but it's more like a genre of person. And a genre can be very broad. So I don't want people to take this as we're putting people in boxes. We're really not. We're just seeing a pattern. We're seeing an archetype, because that's what it is. These are archetypes. And you can compare that to if you're reading a story and there's a hero, there's a villain, there's a mentor, there's a rogue, there's a damsel. Like, it's that kind of stuff. It's a pattern in a story, but the story is not a fictional story. It's like the story of human interaction. And these are roles that pop up. So let's move on. Number two, I took the test once and got one personality type. Then I took the test again and got a different personality type. All right. So a lot of people are going to have an issue with my answer to this because it's a little bit circular reasoning or unfalsifiable reasoning. But it's basically this. So these tests, they rely on you being honest. And a lot of people do not have the self-awareness to be honest. Or let's not even say that. Let's just say at this particular moment in time when you took the test, you felt a certain way about yourself and certain aspects of yourself were shining through when maybe that's like not always the case. So this is an issue with these tests because, for one, a lot of people just aren't honest. They're going to answer in a way that's like, I want to be the best. When it comes to personality types, it's not whoever's the best or whoever's the rarest, or it's just like, what kind of role do you usually play in society? It's not a better and worse type thing. But when people take the test, a lot of the time, they're like, I don't want to make myself look bad to myself. So that's one issue with the test. Another issue is that these tests are not very comprehensive. So it's kind of like taking a political test. I don't know if you've taken those tests that put you on like a quadrant between 4 areas of the political alignment chart. But if you've taken that test, you know that even though it's like 60 questions, there's a lot of lack of nuance in these questions. A lot of the time I found myself saying, well, you know, if you're asking me the question and it's like with this stipulation or that stipulation, I would answer differently in the negative or positive. So that's another issue with taking personality type tests. So if you can't take tests, then how the hell do you find out what personality type you are? This is basically what I'm trying to teach with this part of my channel that I'm going into MBTI with. I am teaching how to type people, but through observation, not through like you ask them 20 questions and you find out like what they are. This is an observational practice that you have to learn how to do. It's spotting patterns. And if you naturally cannot spot patterns, then I'm going to do my best to teach you. I'm not going to say you're screwed. I'm going to do my best to teach you so you can see these archetypes. So do not rely on the tests. And this is a thing I put in my video. This was a caveat I put in my video that no one paid attention to, apparently, because this was like the second most common comment. It was like I took the test and I got INTJ, and then I took the test again, and then I'm an INTP. It's like, bro, you're one of those. You're close enough to one of those. I mean, those two types are like pretty close in not in the function sense, but in like the behavioral sense, they're pretty close. So let's go on. I don't want to sort people into categories is another one that people for some reason think they have to do. If you learn this, you're not putting someone into a category where it's like you'll never unsee what they are. It's just kind of like there. It's just there. It's in the background. It's helping you like interact with this person. It's kind of like walking into a restaurant and seeing a name tag on an employee that tells you what they are. So you're not asking a server, hey, why aren't you holding a mop and a bucket in your hand? Or you're not asking a janitor for a menu. You're not going up to the cook and saying, where's my order, please? That's the server's job. That's the usefulness of MBTI. It's not to discriminate against people, okay? It's not... and again, there's no good or bad type to be. These are all useful in society. That's why they exist, because they're filling in a need. There's no hierarchy, okay? It's not a hierarchy. It's not like one is better than the other. It's just a broad spectrum of behavioral patterns that have been observed. Moving on. I'm 2 personality types. No, the fuck you're not. Well, okay. A person, their cognitive functions they're not always, like your dominant function is not always going to be the one you're using the most at any point in time. You're not going to be using your dominant function at every point in time is what I'm trying to say. So let me give you an example. I'm an INTP, okay? I use logic first and foremost, but there are times where I have to use extroverted feeling, or I have to go into my blind spot. And this took a lot of practice, but I will have to use extroverted sensing, which is insane. It's kind of like me going Super Saiyan, because when I go into extroverted sensing, you pair that with my like extreme logic, and I basically like beat out any other type. But like any type can beat out any other type under certain circumstances. But the thing is, most people aren't aware of like what makes them go Super Saiyan mode. But anyway, the reason some people think there are 2 personality types, or they've been switching around, is because again they took the test one time and then they took it again and they got 2 different personality types, and then or either that or they identify with 2 different personality types, which I can see, because an INTP is very similar to an INTJ, but an INTP is also similar to an INFP. So you could get confused and think that you're one or the other. I remember when I met this INFP girl, I thought she was an INTP like me. I thought she was like, oh, cool, like she's super shy like me. And then I find out like I'm trying to talk to her about ideas, and she's just like, I don't want to talk about that. She was just like not interested in talking about like weird ideas. She was all about like the gossip. And I was like, oh, okay, something's different here, because there are certain people who are as shy as me, but they're on some totally different shit that I'm not on. So yeah, not 2 personality types, but you can, other functions in your cognitive stack can kind of commandeer the vehicle. They start piloting the vehicle, and then, this is how you get 2 different test results, because you're in 2 different states of mind. The personality type that you are is like the function that you're using the most out of the day. So like I can act like an ESFJ because like ESFJs are just INTPs flipped upside down on the cognitive spectrum. So if I try really hard enough, if I knock out my dominant logic function through like alcohol, I'll act more like an ESFJ. And that's one of the ways to do it. Going like changing your state of mind in a way. Like you can get when I get angry, I develop ENTJ traits. I get very commanding and I get very stubborn, and this is like not a good ENTJ. This is like a bad ENTJ. But anyway, yeah. So it's not that you're two personality types. There's always going to be one that you're it for like 90% of the day. But anyway, let's move on. Why didn't you talk about INTJs? I swear to God, no other type was in the comments talking to me about why I didn't talk about them. And that's understandable, I guess. Like I said to almost every INTJ who commented, I will do a video just for you, and I'll probably do it sooner because I know that there's so many there's so many INTJs in the audience who watch my videos, probably because they vibe with the INTP style of thinking. But yeah, INTJs, the reason I did not talk about you guys is because when it comes to introverted intuition dominant, I was already talking about the INFJ, which is my best friend. So I was using her as an example as the introverted intuitive dominant, because the initial video was more about understanding the cognitive functions. It wasn't really about, let me talk about every of the 16 personality types, and I will go into exhaustive detail about them, and I'll say funny things about them that are so true. Those are going to be their own videos. I just wanted to talk about the dominant type of every function. And that in that video, that just happened to be the person I understand kind of the most, which is my best friend. I mean, outside of myself, obviously, I understand myself the most. And if you notice in these examples that I was using of the cognitive function dominance, they were all people very close to me. It was my mom, it was me, it was my best friend, it was a streamer I watch like every day. So yeah, I will talk about every type. I will say though that there are some types that I'm not very familiar with. ESTJ is one of them, but it's only because for whatever reason, I just don't run into a lot of them. I don't know why. I like them a lot, but it's very rare for me to run into an ESTJ. And every time I do, we just like, it's like two magnets. We just like lock into each other. But INTJs, I'm pretty familiar with them. I have quite a few friends. I think they're pretty awesome. I really like INTJs. I think I really respect how they're nonchalant. Like INTPs are nonchalant too, but we can get very like emotional. I feel like INTJs, when they get emotional, they just kind of like withdraw. I really don't see them being like overly emotional. Like when an INTP gets emotional, we spaz out big time. INTJs are like, I'm going to become very cold right now. And yeah, like I said, they can be manipulative, but I would say I've seen them be that way, but not with me, because it just like I see through it and they can see that I see through it. So it's just like, oh, and then we just have to talk like normal. I had a cousin when we were little. She's an INTJ, and she was very like, if she didn't get her way, she would basically just try to emotionally manipulate. Like she would act sad and she would act distant and like emo, and like until everyone just kind of gave her what she wanted. But not me. I was just like, I would just act aloof. Like I wasn't noticing how she was pretending to be sad. And then eventually she got tired of it. So that's just one example of INTJs. I think they do get a bad rap in media because like almost every villain is a fucking INTJ, because it's just so easy to take their like how they think and put it in a evil light. Like they're basically like always planning stuff. So it's like, oh, this is a schemer. This person's a schemer. They want power, but they want it from the shadows. So yeah, I think ENTJs and INTJs they're so typecast as the villain, and they're really not. I don't think they're villainous at all. I think people just don't understand them, and especially like from our society that is mostly censors, they read coldness and like emotionlessness and callousness as like you're being evil. But that's just not the case. A lot of the time they're just trying to get their goals done. But anyway, so INTJs, do not worry. You will get your video sooner rather than later. Let's move on. Oh, this is another one that I did kind of fuck up here. I got a lot of people in the comments getting mad at me for saying astrology isn't real. I'm not going to say it's not real, because I do think there is something. There's something there. It's a very old tradition. I think astrology on TikTok is a lot of the time a bunch of bullshit, but I think the actual like stuff that the Indian sages are on has a lot of merit. The only I haven't wrapped my mind around it because I don't know. I'm too focused on MBTI. I think astrology is a similar thing, but it's more like your life trajectory. It's MBTI is just like broad categories of people, but astrology is very personalized. It's very like, this is the path your life is going to take because these are your these are your individual characteristics. And the way they determine that from what I can theorize is that over the centuries that we have been on this planet as a species, people have looked up at the stars and they've noticed the seasons and they've noticed patterns down to like the day of the month, the day of the year. So they understand that through looking at these patterns of the stars that have, what I'm really saying is that like the universe is one big interconnected, like, I don't know. I compared it to a gears, like in a watch, how it's all interlocked. And I'm not saying that like Jupiter or Mercury or Neptune have a force on you in the sense that like there's gravity on you. Like that's just not true. Like scientifically, that's not true. But that's what scientists say to try to dispute astrology a lot of the time. They will say, you know, the doctor that's next to you actually exerts more force on you than Saturn. If we're talking about gravitation, but I really don't think it's a gravitational thing. I don't think it's the forces. I think it's the universe is one big interlocked mechanism. And so when certain stars are in a certain place, certain things happen. It's a correlation type thing. It's not a causation type thing. So that's my understanding. The stars in a certain way affect people a certain way, because certain times of year have who knows what kind of effect on the development of a human. So yeah, that's just what I think. I think it's long-term pattern recognition. And that's what a lot of like spiritual stuff is. It's just pattern recognition, but on scales that are higher than science, because science is very narrowed down. And when you do something using empirical reasoning, you have to make the conditions of any test very narrow, because it has to be repeatable. It has to be unfalsifiable, it has to be falsifiable. So any experiment you do is going to be like very narrow just because it has to be. And it's a narrow experiment, but it has to have a lot of tests. You need like 10,000 people for like a kind of test at the very minimum. So yeah, I think spirituality is just very broad pattern recognition to the point where it's like you can't really experiment. There isn't really an experiment to show a pattern, because these patterns are like centuries old and we just don't have the data. I think in the future, we probably will have like the kind of data we need to prove like spiritual type shit like astrology. But for now, yeah, we're just very early in the kind of experimentation that needs to be done to prove that astrology would be real. So yeah, I do think astrology, in some sense, there's an aspect to it that is true. It does get a very bad rap, but I think there are people who understand it well and can use it accurately. So another question I got that I thought was interesting is, can you be bad at your dominant function? And yes, you can, because your cognitive stack is frozen the way it is. It's just stuck, like you're just going to be that type. So if you have a dominant function and you're bad at it, I mean, you're just like, like, are you even trying? So an example that I use of someone with a dominant function that they are bad at is Patrick Star. Patrick Star is my personality type. He's an INTP. And you will notice this because he is always coming up with logical reasons for SpongeBob to do something. He's always saying, no, you're doing it wrong. You got to do it this way, the logical way. But the thing is, his fucking logic does not make sense. It's nonsensical logic. So yeah, you can be bad at your dominant function, unfortunately. And a lot of the time, like, these are like mental issues. So the person will still read as their type. It's just they don't have the superpower of that type. They're doing it very wrongly. But if I come across any other, I think the character of Philomena Kunk is also a INTP that's like dumb, because she will say like very logical sounding things, but they're obviously nonsensical. They're obviously dumb. So yeah, what else? So I think another thing that people took issue with was me saying that introverted functions are stronger than extroverted functions, but I just mean that in the sense that an introverted function does not need, like, they both bounce off each other, right? Introverted thinking bounces off extroverted thinking, okay? And if two people have it strong, then, that's good. That's a good partnership. But the thing is, my dominant function, which is introverted thinking, logic, I don't need other people thinking. I don't need extroverted thinking. I mean, it's good to have it, because extroverted thinking will tell you like, hey, I know you have this crazy theory, but okay, there are parts of this theory that I know from talking to experts, like, this is not wrong, like, I've heard different, okay? But so it's useful in that sense. But introverted thinking, I can come up with theories all day. I don't need to bounce, like, whether they're right or wrong, I can feel fine just thinking all day logically. And it's the same for introverted feeling. Like, they have their personal moral convictions that they feel that they don't need to share with people. They just have them. But extroverted feeling is like all about the harmony. So they're like pushing their, hey, don't do that. Hey, like, are you okay? Like, they're two different things. One's broad in scope, but not as deep. It's like broad, but shallow. And again, this is like, you need this because these are all on axes. I'm not going to go too deep into that right now. I will in a bit. But introverted functions, what makes them stronger is just that they can function alone. That's all it is. Extroverted functions kind of need the outside thing it's kind of like a radar that they're pinging off of, and they need things to ping off of. Like an extroverted thinker, they need smart people around them because they need to suck up the ideas from them. They're building the way an ESTJ, this ESTJ friend I had, I told her my mind looks like a web, like like every idea is connected to another thing. Everything's just true, false, true, false, true, false. This is true. This is fake. This is true. It's all just a big tangled web of like interconnected ideas. And she described her brain as like, oh, I just have like a big bubble of ideas, just a big bubble of things I've collected. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense, because they're collecting the ideas. And if one contradicts another, then they just solve the contradiction. But it's not like they're trying to solve the contradiction on their own, which is what introverted thinking does. If I am confronted with two contradicting points of information, I will use my logic to instantly deduce like which one is the right one and which one's the wrong one, just based on my previous knowledge that I've collected and verified to be true. So that's what I mean when I say the introverted functions are stronger than the extroverted functions. But that's okay, because remember, everyone has an even number of all of them. We have every function in our stack. It's just that they're in different orders. And so the thing I'll close out with is going back to, I guess, the pseudoscience argument. This is somewhat of a unscientific thing. It's a model. I have a working model of how people behave, and it's based on MBTI. And so I could tell you till I'm blue in the face, I believe it works because it works for me. And, that's not going to convince anyone, because for something to count as, I guess, scientific, which is not what I'm trying to do, but I do need to get people on board with this. So what I am going to try to do is teach people how to first recognize the personality types and type people on their own. And they if I can do that successfully, repeatedly, and have multiple people say, oh, okay, like your model actually works. I see the pattern. I see like what you're talking about. Because the thing is, the cognitive functions are like, no one's debating whether they're true or not. Even in the psychological academia like type shit, you know, like there are people who are objectively more emotional. There are people who are objectively more logical. There's intellectuals, there's feelers, there's people who don't like to think abstractly. There's people who like to think concretely. They're sensors. So these are what they're seeing as, rightfully so, is that these are degrees. So there's a degree of like how much a person is feeling, how much a person is thinking. That's how they choose to see it. It's an axis. So you can't be totally feeling and totally thinking, because they're two different judging functions. Someone who makes decisions is either going to use logic or they're going to use emotions. Someone who takes in the world is either going to use intuition or sensing. So these are not debated. This part of MBTI is not debated. What is debated is the idea that there are 16 types. And I will concede that there are a lot of types, but I will say that they are found within the 16 category. This is why I say each 16 personality types, they're like broad categories. They're tropes, they're archetypes, but the archetype can have many different flavors. And so that's what I'm trying to point out, and that's what other people are trying to point out, that there is these types. These types are the source code for a person. That's what they are. There's 16 source codes. But just like one person, like a phone can be running on iOS, and another phone can be running on iOS also. But when you open those two phones, they look totally different. But they're both iOS, but they're both totally different. But you can recognize that they're iOS, and you know what iOS is capable of, and you know what Android is capable of. So that's basically what I'm saying here, that there are 16 source codes to the fucking human brain, and figuring out those 16, being able to spot them, gives you somewhat of not just, I don't want to say an advantage over other people, but just an advantage in general, because this can be used manipulatively, or it can be used in a way that benefits everyone. Because when you know a person's personality type, you generally know what they want out of an interaction. And you can just give it to them, and they'll be like, holy shit, like, how did you know? Or you can like make little assumptions about like how they would handle information being presented to them, or how they would handle a situation arising, and they'll just be like, yeah, I would do that, you know. And it's good when a person feels understood, they feel good. And that's basically what I'm trying to get at here. In the modern era, a lot of people do not understand each other. We have so much division in the current human civilization because we're so connected, but we don't understand each other. So when we see certain things, we are just like, what is wrong with this person? But a lot of the time, the hostility comes from not being understood and not understanding. And that's all I have to say. So thank you for watching. I will do another one of these at some point. I don't want to make any promises, because the way I make content is not on a schedule. I feel very constricted by schedules. I basically just follow my bliss when it comes to making videos. And when I do that, the videos come out faster. When I promise people that I'm going to make a video next or whatever, that's when I start kind of locking up and not wanting to proceed. And that kind of happened, I guess, with this video a little bit, but it was just more like, I don't know. I just was not like, some people were asking for another MBTI video, and I was like, you know what, it has been a while, but I don't really feel like I'm in the mood to do it. So, but I did it anyway because I love my fans. I love my subscribers. I love my audience. Your dear beloved YouTuber. Anyway, I'm signing off. Goodbye. Have a good day. Bye.